Hello, this video will be about extremely interesting and amazingly detailed prophecy from Germany, those of Alois Irlmaier, Bernard Rembold, and the traditionally very old birch tree prophecies from Germany. Although they will be in general local for the region from which they originate, still they will be equally relevant for all people on Earth, because they will be providing a glimpse into the dramatic events which will be happening very soon. And it is highly advisable to first see the first episode of this series, where important questions are answered, as how much of all this will be happening and how much is hypothetical, and where do these episodes, which will come in this video, fit into the overall timeline of events which will be coming in the next decade or maybe a bit more. Besides these three sets of prophecies, which are quite an extensive material by itself, I will try to provide like a general overview of the other wars which are to be expected in the tribulation in Bible time terms. Although it will be only a matter of personal opinion if one wishes to see them as separate wars and revolutions and riots, or one continuous war which will be fought on many fronts and continents. Probably the second view of the situation will be more realistic, but ultimately it won't even matter who will fight who, because at the end all the participating armies will be completely annihilated because of the nature of the weapons which we have nowadays. And the purpose of this world war or series of wars will be for humanity to understand how senseless the entire concept of war is. This concept will not exist after that. It's not that the victors will conquer territories as it was until now, and at least in the recent history. I'm not talking about how it was a couple of thousand years ago. And the main purpose for which I will be mentioning details of who will be fighting who will not be to prepare you from now who will be the right and who will be the wrong in this war, but to strengthen your faith in the prophecies once the events start happening, because then the situation will look very hopeless, and the righteous people, the people with noble souls, will find a great source of inner power coming from these prophecies, because without them the situation would look hopeless. While those who will take shelter in the wisdom of the prophecies, they will remain calm, even while outside the world is getting destroyed. And to be able to take shelter in the wisdom of the prophecies, one has to study them in detail, so that when the events start unfolding, one will be sure, oh yes, it is exactly as expected, so the good end will come as well. There is no other way. And then towards the end of the video, I'm gonna touch the subject why, after having such precise and amazingly detailed prophecies, the people, not only all over the world, but also in Europe and even in Germany in particular, have heard more about the Mayan prophecies, for example, or Nostradamus. And why? Because the Mayan prophecies, they lack any detail. Also, they were twisted by the media. Everything was done without consulting the actual Mayan elders. And as far as Nostradamus, he's so vague and symbolic that again it is very easy to twist his prophecies. And in contrast with that, the detailed and precise prophecies, they are deliberately hidden from the view of the wide public because many of them reveal in detail and well in advance the insidious plans of the robbers dressed as kings. I like that expression from Kalki Purana. So Alois Irlmaier was born in a very ordinary German family and was a builder by trade. His astral vision opened towards the late years of his life, and at that time he started accepting people and helping them, but always for free. He decided never to accept payment for it and thus died in poverty. He could see the future in such an amazing detail, and also the past, that even courts, legal courts, were seeking his help in dissolving difficult cases, and even the Chancellor of Germany himself during the war times. Even the American General Clay, who was the US occupational, the head of the US occupation zone in Germany. There are a couple of websites which have many stories and details of how accurate he would see things. For example, a funny detail about our times, he saw the people as constantly talking next to their Zuban boxes, he said, and they even also play with them all the time. What was a Zuban box in his time was a very colorful and rather large and flat matchbox in Germany, basically the same appearance as our cell phones. He was also brought to court. Of course, people are always suspicious when somebody else knows much more than them. But he was declared innocent because right in the court he told the judge, your wife is now at home, she's drinking tea with this and this person, and he described her dress and everything else, and everything turned out to be absolutely true. So he was declared innocent, and the decision of the court is still in the Munich State Archive. So Irlmaier is an extremely reliable source. And let's jump directly to the predictions about exactly our times. According to him, we must be, again, as almost all other prophecies, within the last few years before the tribulation starts. And he died decades ago, and he said, I'm glad I die now because I don't want to live through the Third World War after the visions I had about it. And he knew very well what is he talking about because he himself took part as a regular soldier in World War I, and he said that World War III will be way more horrible than all the other wars we know about combined. So here start the prophecies concerning our times. First comes prosperity like never before, happened in Germany. Then there is decline in faith like never before, definitely atheism is on the rise. Then an unprecedented corruption of morals, obviously happening. Then a large number of foreigners come to the country. The refugees are here already. The money is losing value more and more, so this is the next prediction we have. The revolution soon follows, And then the big war, the attack comes overnight from the east. So we've got only 2 points to complete before the Great War: the inflation and the revolution in Germany. And there will be revolutions in many other places, as confirmed by many other prophecies. Paramonov also mentioned these 2 points as coming next. Weeks ago he said now the big inflation can come at any time. And then yesterday I heard an old interview of his, not from this year. Some time ago he explained that these secret sects which are running the scam of the world financial system currently, they have their approved plan since years. And in that plan, it was originally written that in 2025, all the fiat currencies will be centrally blocked, like the banks will be on hold, suspended. And by 2027, they were planning to make the fiat currencies obsolete and run only on gold. So that was their original plan, and then they started saying it seems that we'll have to do it earlier than that. And once the inflation starts, it will be terrible, like at least 1,000 times devaluation or something like that, as mentioned in the previous episode. About the Deutsche Mark, which was the previous legal tender in Germany, the land of Irlmaier. His prophecies are somewhat local. So he said that the Deutsche Mark would be okay, but we'll have to be careful about the next one, because that will lose value. And the next one was the euro, and is still the legal tender in Germany as well. He also said, and now the 3 robber riders are coming. And the people who were listening to him asked him what he means, and he said, the tax office, the banks, and the insurance companies. People simply won't be able to pay their taxes, they will be so high. Just for comparison, currently in Germany, the government takes, under all kinds of pre-tax taxes, fees, and obligatory payments, and all kinds of formulations, more than 75% of everything people earn with their labor. So it doesn't say directly in the prophecy that the revolution and the riots will be over the increased taxes, but it seems to be very likely, and few other prophecies imply that as well. And similar revolutions and riots will be erupting at different points in time throughout the tribulation, all around the earth, on all continents. At some places there will be agents of these secret sects. They will have like shills who will... This is all described in the prophecies. It's not from me. The people with this vision, they saw them going to the people's houses and instigating them to riot, so that they can have a gathering of people who value their freedom and just slaughter them. But that was just at one particular place. Maybe in other countries the revolutions would be genuine, one never knows. But in overall, the main aftermath of them will be just slaughter of lots of people. I did not find any particular mention if they will be of any use in providing at least some sort of relief during this tribulation, but Paramonov also mentioned this type of revolutions. And the riots which they are currently instigating, we know for sure that those are planned and centrally instigated on the pretext of racism and all this stuff. That is only to an attempt to kill prematurely those who are more inclined towards rioting, so that when the real riots start, they can manage to kill more people easier. And then the tribulation starts. Irlmaier describes it in this way. Everybody calls peace, shalom, and then it all starts. The Middle East is suddenly in flames. Big naval forces are facing hostility in the Mediterranean. Maybe with this expression, peace, shalom, Irlmaier refers to this peace treaty which is mentioned in the Bible, 7-year peace treaty signed in Jerusalem, and that's the very beginning of the biblical tribulation. So could be mention of the very same event. And then this Islamic Muslim takeover of southern Europe, which is described in many prophecies. Irlmaier gives only hints about that. He says the spark is somewhere in the Balkans or somewhere there, and the Balkans are very near to the Middle East, practically the next region. And also this initial Middle Eastern conflict, which we are going to see in detail in the next episode, is also connected with Constantinople, which is, you can say, in the Balkans. So definitely there is connection. And when he speaks about the development of the battles, he also mentions some crescent symbol participating even in Germany. So although from his local German perspective, he says mostly that the Russians are the ones that invade from the east, he also gives few hints that it is actually the east against the west, because who answers the Russians? The big country across the ocean, probably US. And it is really not clear if this east-west conflict is going on at the same time as the Islamic invasion, or it is shortly before or after, but it is definitely around the same time or exactly at the same time. Let's see what he says further. The year before the war will be a fruitful year with much fruit and grain. This is also mentioned in a few other prophecies, and that's a gift from God so that the people can prepare. He continues, the war begins at sunrise. It comes along rapidly. The farmers sit in the pub playing cards when the foreign soldiers look through the windows and doors. The very first attack comes from the northwest and reaches all the way to the Swiss border. And after that, one attack after another. Massive units march from the east into Belgrade and move towards Italy. Then the three armored wedges advanced with lightning speed in the north of the Danube over West Germany towards the river Rhine. Without preliminary warning, this will occur so unexpectedly that the population flees full of panic to the west. Many cars clog the roads. So the problem will be that the people in panic will try to run using the highways in Europe. However, those will be just totally jammed, and then the tanks will come, which will also use the highway for transportation, and they will simply roll on the sides, all these cars. The city of Frankfurt is almost completely destroyed, and so is the valley of the river Rhine, mostly with air attacks. Immediately the revenge comes from across the large water. However, the yellow dragon invades in Alaska and Canada at the same time, but he does not go far. When the Golden City, Prague, is destroyed, it all begins. Like a yellow line, it goes up to the city in the bay. It will be a clear night when they begin to throw it. The tanks are still driving, but those who sit in these tanks became black. Wherever this dust falls down, everything is dead. No tree, no bush, no cattle, no grass. Everything withers and goes black. The houses still exist. It's a long line. Whoever goes over this line dies. The ones who are on the one side cannot go over the other side. The invaders retreat to the north, never to come back again. The airplanes drop a yellow powder between the Black Sea and the North Sea, a yellow strip of death, as wide as half of Bavaria. On this strip, even grass won't grow. Forget about humans. From the east, there are many caterpillars, But the caterpillars inside, everybody is already dead, although the vehicles keep rolling on in order to gradually stop automatically. Pilots drop down small black boxes. They explode before they touch the earth and spread yellow or green smoke or dust. Whatever comes in contact with that dust becomes dead, no matter if it is a person, animal, or a plant. For 1 year, no organism is allowed to enter this area, otherwise it dies. These boxes are satanic. Wherever they explode, everything becomes black and the meat falls off people's bones. So sharp is the poison. And then he continues to describe the destruction of England by these black boxes that they drop in the water, destabilize the world's waters, cause terrible floods all over the earth, and effectively submerge part of the island along with other islands. But that will come in the episode about England. Irlmaier also spoke about this famous couple of days of darkness, which are subject of many genuine prophecies. So something like this is very likely to happen. And it might be worldwide or something which happens over many regions. But let's see his German perspective of the event. During the war, the big darkness comes. It will last 72 hours. It will become dark at a day during the war. Then it will hail, lightning and thunder, earthquakes will tear the earth. Please do not go out of the house at that time. Don't put on the electric lightning. You can put only a candle. There will be no electricity. Those who will inhale the dust will get cramps and die. Don't open the windows. Cover them completely with black paper. All open standing water will become poisonous, and also all meals which have been in the open and not locked in cans. Also, meals in glass containers will become poisonous as they won't be protected completely. Buy few soldered tin cans with rice and legumes so that you do not starve during this period. Tap water will be drinkable but not milk. Outside, as the dust of death swirls around, many people die. After 72 hours, everything is over. But don't go out of the house nor look out through the windows, and keep the blessed candle lit up all the time. It has to be made of 100% beeswax, otherwise it won't burn. The rivers will have so little water at that time that man will be easily able to jump over them. The cattle will fall dead, the grass will become yellow and dry. The people who die will also become yellow and then black. Eventually, the wind will drive the clouds of death to the east. Irlmaier also mentioned that during these few years the climate will become suddenly much warmer. The glaciers in Germany they have a couple of glaciers over there. There will be no proper winters as we have now, no more winters. Exotic fruits will grow in Germany, oranges. Basically, the weather over there will be like as it is now in Italy. This is what Irlmaier says about the future of Russia. Revolutions break out and a civil war. The corpses are so much that you cannot remove them off the roads anymore. And then the cross comes to honor anew. The Russian people believe in God anew. The bosses of the leader party commit suicide, and in the blood the great guilt is washed off. I see a red mass mixed with yellow faces, general riots and horrible killing. By prayer to God, the monster of hell dies, and the young people believe anew. The war, at least in Germany, will be quite short, he says, maybe something like 3 months. And after the entire tribulation of riots and everything is over, the great peace will start, and the people who will live to see all that will be very, very lucky. By the way, the medieval Indian mystic from Orissa, India, Chutananda, which I mentioned in the previous episode, he had what would be for some people unusual prediction about Russia. He said it will become a Vedic country. But for those who have been following my videos since years, they will understand what he meant. And also the war will be short in Germany, however for Italy they say it will last some 4 years. And now the prophecies of Bernard Rambold. They are remarkably well preserved, considering that they are quite old, and he was illiterate, but a pastor wrote them down. He is also an extremely reliable source. He's been verified many times that he is genuine, and he left prophecies for all the times through history, starting from his own time until date, and they have come true. Of course, we can't expect that clear language and almost as modern as we had from Irlmaier, but still, I will read that part of the prophecies which is for our times. I will skip the earlier part, otherwise this video will be too long. This is the beginning of the Blood Age, starts he. The city of Cologne will see a terrible battle. Mostly he is talking actually about locations around his own regions. Again, these are very regional prophecies. We should not assume that the center of the entire war was around Cologne. He is just reporting what he saw about the future of this particular region. There will be blood until the ankle, but then at the end a foreign king will stand up and fight for victory. Most likely that is the same big country across the big water that Irlmaier is mentioning. The rest of the enemy escapes to the Birch Tree County. Here the last great battle is fought for the good cause. The foreigners brought Black Death into the country. This could be a reference to the deadly powder they would be sprinkling, or maybe some deadly disease, and by foreigners, well, it can mean pretty much anybody, because many countries will be involved in this war, and everybody will be a foreigner, more or less. What is spared by the sword will be eaten by the plague. At this time, France will be divided. There will be other prophecies in this regard, lots of them in the future episodes. The German kingdom will elect a simple man as emperor. Simple man is Bauer. They have translated Bauer as a simple man, means like a peasant, an agriculture person, but also it can mean a simple soldier. He will rule Germany for an year and a day. There are other references that they will select some sort of simple folk as a leader for a short time, but that won't work as well. He who wears the imperial crown after him will be a man the world has long hoped for. This is one of the countless references to the future incarnation of Christ. Well, it's not future, it's for us it is already present, and these are the prophecies of the time when he will be ruling as a king after he defeats the Antichrist. There are countless, Christian, I found many Catholic prophecies about him. In the European prophecies, they usually call him the great monarch. At this time, there will be no more Jewish people in Germany. And after that, there will be good and happy time, and the praise of God will dwell on earth. And then there is no war ever again. He made remarks regarding some of the lines of his prophecies, namely that there will be a uprising in Germany and then a religious war will break with invading Muslim people, which is very much in agreement with what Irlmaier says about the uprising and then the invasion. And he also says that the invasion will be of Muslims and Russians, and many other foreign kings will be involved. While at the same time, France is in civil war, he says, which is confirmed by many other prophecies. So while I hear from the alternative media that in the Western world they are definitely preparing the devils, they are preparing the people for their devilish plan, devilish war, and even private corporations now have hired mercenaries, armies. I hear these people get salaries in tens of thousands per month. And in Russia, actually, very recently, they started recruiting as well extremely actively. I believe as paid jobs, because since the beginning of the year, on the pretext of the epidemics, they have sold basically their military complex, so that is private as well. And they're restructuring their government. It's not correct to call it government because the Russian Federation is simply a trade firm, as I discussed in previous videos, but now they are making it in a new form. It's basically a colony of a certain Middle Eastern country, which is not news by itself, but it's kind of news that now they are making it even openly. And these young men that they are now recruiting on this type of jobs, if we can call it in such a way, these are the ones that will be in that army from which nobody will return home. In the Bible, this is called the wrath, the anger of God, but this is figurative, it's like a fairy tale. The truth is that these men, they have all the information they need to know what is happening, and still they are applying, they are getting jobs in this type of armies. And it doesn't matter at all, will their party in the war win or lose. At the end, for them personally, they will have to answer in front of God and their own higher self. Why did they get involved? Why did they agree and voluntarily apply for a job in this devilish scheme? So calling it the wrath, the anger of God upon earth, is certainly one way to look at things. And there is some truth in that, but in reality it's mostly us, as explained in this video. We have normal, sensible politicians who are ready and more than qualified to organize the world very quickly in a way that there will be no war, no starvation. However, they simply don't get enough support from the people. Why? Because everybody has his own but because of this, because of that, and always that but is smaller and more insignificant than the big gain they could have by having complete peace and justice on earth by supporting these politicians. However, most of us have been silently supporting with our taxpayer money the devilish governments. We have not been innocent victims, we have been accomplices in all this. At least in a collective level, some people on individual level refused to be accomplices and did whatever was in their jurisdiction against the devils, because when one sees a crime being committed, it is one's duty to do whatever is in his or her capacity, otherwise one becomes accomplice. So collectively we were accomplices, and within a couple of short years it will backfire on us, and it will happen in such a way that those who remain alive will envy the dead, at least during the difficult years of transition. After that it will be peace. Finally they will be able to rest. Otrok Vyacheslav also mentioned a great war between Russia and China. So what are the new developments? Like years ago we heard about those underground Chinese cities, which in Russia itself are being built without much publicity, and there is kind of a ban to talk about it in the Russian media. And now we have new suspicious developments along these lines, like for example there was what they called a massive Chinese military drill, which interestingly enough was taking place in Russia. So they opened the borders and this huge army entered, and then, isn't it very strange, the army just disappeared. There was a report that nobody knows what happened to it. This is very, very recent. And then there is this Silk Road Highway project, for which they found Japanese investors. Okay, so far so good. But of course every investor has its own conditions, and strangely enough their condition was that there will be only Asian workers on this construction. So in practical terms the obligation was signed that 2 million Chinese will simply enter and settle down in Russia, of course, and build convenient for them highway into Russia, connecting them, facilitating their entry. So all the major military powers on earth will be involved in this war, and probably all powers at all on earth will be involved. But as I warned in the previous episode, Russia's participation, that of the Russian Federation, this evil, devilish financial institution, should not be confused with the light of Russia, which will be emerging after the war and the great destruction. And it is not that the Russian Federation will have a better government after the war. Nothing like that. There will be no governments the way we know them anywhere on earth after the Great War and the return of Christ. In those times, there will be something which the prophets call kingdoms. However, I think that if I use this term, the people will apply the propaganda distorted image of that they have most likely about the kingdom as or some sort of absolute monarchy, and the people having less freedoms even than now. That's why I'm always trying to avoid the use of word kingdoms, although it comes in all the old prophecies. They all say that we will return to kingdoms. And for them, it was the right word of expression because most of them lived or at least have heard about righteous kingdoms. While this will be very difficult to imagine for modern people. That's why instead of kingdom, I give the description of this kingdom, which because I went through many prophecies during the last week when I was preparing for this video, and they describe exactly what Paramonov says. The money will be returned to the people. It will not belong to the governments, to the kings anymore. And the people will be living in absolute freedom. And not because, hurrah, hurrah, finally we are lucky with a good leader. No, because no leader will have the power to restrict the personal freedom of the ordinary people, and the kingdoms will be only as institutions for providing services to the people. And just to finish the overview of some of the wars of the end times, it seems that the Gog and Magog invasion will be something like a major war during these years. It is mentioned many times, but the problem is that it seems who are Gog and Magog differs from source to source, and they might be talking about completely different tribes. From the Bible, it's not possible to understand when will this war happen at all. Although we can say in general that by Gog and Magog in the Bible, it's usually meant the Russian regions or Siberia. However, the Islamic sources give much more detail and precise description and exact timing when the war will happen. According to them, it will happen even after Christ kills the Antichrist. And they have also a very precise description of Gog and Magog. They say it's a very multitudinous tribe, means many people. Just they cover everything with people, thousands of them behind every bush. They are very short. They come from Asia and have these elongated eyes, and they live behind the Great Wall. So it seems to be a completely different story. One of the last episodes of this series will be exactly about this Gog and Magog invasion. But again, we don't know, maybe in the Bible, when they say Gog and Magog invasion, they mean the war which was discussed in this episode here, depending on who Gog and Magog is in Bible language. And now the birch tree prophecies of Germany. The birch tree is believed to refer to the Westphalia region of Germany, where the end battle for Germany in the end times will be taking place. These are very old prophecies, and actually we no longer know by whom were they made originally. However, we know that they were very respected through the ages, and were quoted for centuries by sources all over Germany. Many centuries, they seem to be very old. So, and that's why I decided to include them, because if so many people in the really old times thought they were important, well, most likely they were important. And there is no one single text of the prophecies. Instead of that, they appeared in written form, in some cases as early as 5-6 centuries ago, according to mainstream dating. So I'm just gonna read for you parts of some of the variations of these prophecies. They are not extremely detailed, but here and there we get an extra detail, while the same timeline and development of events as seen in Irlmaier and Rumboldt remains the same. Two mighty powers will face each other. The struggle between them will begin in the second half of the 20th century. It will overthrow mountains and split up rivers. A great challenge will come to pass, such as no mortal man will have ever expected. Heaven and hell will confront each other in this struggle. Old states will perish, and light and darkness will be put against each other with swords, but it will be swords of different fashion. With these swords, it will be possible to cut up the skies and split the earth. A great lament will come all over mankind, and only a small batch will survive the storm, the pestilence, and the horror. And neither of the two adversaries will conquer nor be vanished. Both mighty ones will lie on the ground, and a new mankind will come into existence. God is the key to everything. And now a few parts of another variation of the prophecy. When the time is near, people will not know how to dress. Women will wear hats like men and pants like men. Then will follow a tragic and unlucky time like our Creator has spoken of before us. People will fear themselves on earth and fear things that are about to come. Thrones will collapse, kingdoms will collapse. And through this process, East against the West will resort to heavy weapons. The war will follow in a year with very mild winter. The flowers will bloom very early in that year, and the cows will be up in their knees in grass by April. This is very early for Germany. The first soldiers that will come will wear cherry blossoms on their helmets. In the middle of Germany they will meet. Towns and villages will be destroyed. The people will hide in the mountains and in the woods. And there will be battles like the world has never seen before. The terrible battle will begin by the birch forest near Bodberg. For 3 days they will fight and stand in blood. All of the prophecies, without exception, say that the West will win this particular war. However, in the long term, that is basically meaningless. The only actual result will be the incredible slaughter. Just few short years after everything is over, any acquisitions of territory will be simply meaningless, because the countries will no longer own the land. The land, as by the law of God, belongs to the tribes, to the people which reside there, and not to the country. So, as you see, we have incredibly detailed and precise prophecies. In one of the next episodes about the same events as they will be happening in France, there is even much more detail. This nun Jeheni, she literally saw through the ages how these evil spirits trained by hellish masters of secret sects, she actually describes how exactly they conspire and carry out their evil schemes, and what kind of disgusting laws they will pass in the Chamber of Deputies of the National Assembly of France, which she calls the Chamber of Hell. They are utterly exposed, and the predictions don't start which at some point, which for now is in the future. No, they have been happening already for a couple of 100 years. So they are absolutely solid, verified. And do we read about this wonderful knowledge in the newspapers? No, no. Only zombie apocalypse style things accredited to the Mayans, although they never asked the Mayan elders. And this is a very clever trick that works actually very well for them. They're using this tendency of the people to seek wisdom from the prophecies. They're using it to predictively program the people into zombie apocalypse. And they have also managed to paint even the new big peace, the era of peace, in dark colors by giving more stress on the end of their demonic world and barely mentioning the beginning of the world of light, which is the main point. And this dark end times propaganda has worked very well for the parasites. All these people who say I don't believe the government but still watch government programs, including those disguised as alternative media. Link to this video can be found in the description. And the second wing of this propaganda comes actually from the New Age community. Most of the people who work on that frontier do it unknowingly, and they preach, oh, don't you worry, there are such prophecies, but there are so many endless options of much more favorable and lighter timelines that don't you worry, there shouldn't be much chance in the lottery that exactly the worst timeline will happen. And that is true, but it is only one part of the story. There is actually no lottery, nothing happens by chance. And this the dark times of 7 years of tribulation or whatever, something of that range, is the most likely scenario, or to be more precise, I believe that a slightly lighter timeline with slightly less tribulation is most likely. And I see that solidifying more and more, because the nearer the events get, the less chances we have. And for now, I don't see any considerable percentage of the people on Earth changing their ways of thinking. I see no signs or reasons to believe that there will be another change of plans, a transfer to a timeline with even less wars and tribulations and starvation. Actually, I'm not aware of even a single prophecy from a verified prophet which talks about smooth and easy transition. And all these prophecies are given to us not to scare us, but to prepare us. And when the things start and we see that indeed they are developing in this way, and we see how close are we to the timeline described in the prophecies, to make our decisions accordingly. For example, it's easy to figure out that coastal regions and the cities in general will be much more dangerous places to be in those times. Promonov also warns, but I hope this is only regional for Russia, for people to form local defense units in the villages because of the gangs of paid mercenaries. And I also believe that it is extremely important to study all the prophecies very carefully about the end times, and not just this episode about the war because it is so emotional and shocking, because we need to understand that this will last a couple of years, 5 in the most mild version I have heard, and 7 in most of the prophecies. And only after that, when everything appears to be completely lost, only then Christ will openly manifest himself and save us finally.